Just some last minute housekeeping stuff for the structural plans. Place a section cut. I'm not going to do this. It's you can do this, but I'll just explain it. Place a section cut with a 24-inch diameter circle here. You call it section A, and this could be sheet A3, A4, A5, somewhere the A sheets. Put a 45-degree triangle on top of it. Solid hatch these three areas. Place a solid line here, and a continuous line, and then from here on out create a phantom line, and at the end just put a solid line up straight, and that's going to be the section cut. Then you have a series of details that symbols to put in. These are 18-inch diameter circles with a line halfway through, and just put a little leg like this. And in the packet, there's 22 details, but I didn't have in the past my students draw all of them. And so you could just look at this drawing and just do the dozen details my students used to have to hand draw. Let me see. Tell you what, yeah, okay, I just noticed this. It's, let me just explain which ones to put in. Detail 1, detail 10, 9, 4, 13, 5, 11, and 12. That's probably good enough down on this plan. If I jump over to the framing plan here, put in detail 16 here, second floor framing plan, and then on the roof, put in detail 18 here for a truss, 18 here for a truss, and 19. This is a ledger detail, and this is 17. So these are the rafters that are sitting on the 6x12 beam. Again, in the structural, call out this fascia, put in these asterisks here for some venting. I won't discuss the square footage on that. We can discuss it a little bit later. And then the plywood, what you should do, this is a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and 1 foot of it gets cut off and tossed out. This roof is, this piece of plywood is on a 8/12 slope. So this red line here, don't offset it 4 foot, offset it 40 inches. And that's a foreshortened length of a 4x8 sheet of plywood. Likewise, all these lookouts. So this is a 3 foot long lookout. We saw this in the first week of class, what a lookout is. And so it will go from one truss through the next truss. It'll be notched, but the truss is fully supported by the wall, and it'll stick out 1 foot. From this fascia here, offset this line and trim it 40 inches, 40 inches, 40 inches, and don't go over the ridge, just stop here. Likewise, on the other side, take this fascia, offset it 40 inches, 40 inches, 40 inches, and stop. Okay, those are the lookouts. So for the plywood, this is a 4x8 sheet of plywood that gets cut off by 1 foot. And so we have 7-foot piece of plywood here. And then the next piece of plywood is a full 8-footer. So this scales from left to right, 2, 4, 6, exactly 8 foot. But this distance here, it's 48 inches sloped at 8/12. So between the distance between this red line and this red line is 45 inches. Now the porches, front porch and back porch, they have a 4x8 sheet of plywood also, and 1 foot of it's going to be cut off. But this distance here on the slope from here to here is 48 inches. But the distance on a slope for a 4/12 slope or a 3/12 slope, say 4/12 slope, is more like 40 inches. So offset these, did I do that right? No, I did that wrong. Offset these two lines by 45 inches versus offset the steeper roof from here to here by 40 inches. Yeah, that'll take care of it. Put in these asterisks here and the asterisks here. That just indicates ventilation. And then between these trusses, this is a 20-inch block of wood. And so is this, and so is this. What you'll have to do is offset a truss 2 inches, offset a truss 2 inches, and dead center between this fascia and this fascia, put in kind of a 20-inch block of wood here. Then copy this with OSNAP turned on Copy this starting from, let's say, the tip of this truss to the tip of this truss to the tip of this truss, and you'll bust out a whole bunch of blocking for the trusses. Do the same thing at the upper roof. Notice this, these are all separate lines. This is not a long dashed line. These are separate blocks of wood, and I want you to draw it that way. Once again, these blocks of wood are halfway between this wall and this wall, or halfway between that fascia and that fascia. So again, once again, go through the keynotes. Aha, that's right. Let me mention another thing. This truss for the upper roof will be 26 feet. Remember, we modeled our house at 26 feet. This is a truss from an old plan. This truss for the garage, it should read 22 feet. They still have our 8 and 12 slopes, and they still have a bearing point here and a bearing point here, and they still have a 1 foot overhang. So place that in there too. So yeah, there's nothing I'm going to do training you guys on AutoCAD. This was just pointing out what you need to do. Now I'm going to turn on the line weight thickness because I want to point something else out. A few inches into this wall, there should be a fat line that goes all the way out, and it will rest right on top of the koozie wall. This is a 2x4 wall. Don't take it all the way through to the concrete block is. This beam here and this beam here, they support this I-joist that spans, well, it runs 26 feet, but it's spanning from wall to beam to beam to wall. Same thing happens on the other side. This I-joist does not span 26 feet. It can't. But if we have a beam here that's centered with the wall and another beam here at the center of the wall, a few inches of the beam, well, really inch and a half, because it's just going to sit on like a trimmer stud. Okay, yeah, a trimmer stud. It rests about an inch and a half here. You can do it 2 inches, and then it can rest fully on this 2x4 koozie wall that we placed down in the basement. Something similar happens at the kitchen and the entry, except downstairs, this beam stopped about where my mouse is here on the koozie wall. This one's going to go all the way core face exterior. So once again, you can't copy this beam and put it down the basement. You'd have to trim it back about 8 inches. So again, you got some beams here and 2 beams here. Again, this framing is fairly identical to the other framing. Then to call out the joist, if you take a line and just tilt it a little bit, put some arrows at the tip of it, put in some text, call out this is 11 7/8 inch series 110 truss joist, a TJI at 24 inches on center. Okay, and one last thing for the upper roof, for the porch roof, front and back. What I want you to do, you're going to have a fat beam in here, which is about 3 inches over from the core face of the post. That's a 6x12 Doug fir number 2. Let me do one other thing. This is a 6x18 Doug fir select structural ridge beam. Okay, and you can just draw some dashed lines in there. This framing is 2x12 Doug fir number 2 rafters spaced at 24 inches on center. This is a type A truss, and this is a type B truss. Now, there's nothing in a book that's a type A and type B truss. You just label them, and then you make a schedule, and the truss company will figure everything else out. Again, you got a cross, an attic access over here, call out for the skylight. Just look at all the keynotes. But what I want to explain about the framing for the roof and back and framing for the roof and front. And then I'm going to talk about this porch framing. Yeah. So the framing for either roof, front or back, you have rafters spaced at 2 feet on center. Okay. And these rafters, they can come up to, well, let's see. Looks like they got, oh, I know what it was. Yeah. Rafters are showing dashed lines here and there's solid lines here because this is a 1 foot overhang. This is a ledger. And quite frankly, this ledger, I got to change this thing. Let's ledger, we could really just go to there. Likewise with the backyard. I'll tell you what, let me undo that. Sorry. Undo that. Just leave it. Okay. I won't explain it. But then at the sloping rafters, put two 2-inch long L's, float them away from the rafter because this is a joist hanger. Okay, so you look at Simpson Strong Tie and look for a U26 joist hanger. It's just a U shape of metal here with some ears here and ears here, as you can nail it off. These 2x6s, will nail on, and this is a 2x6 here also, is the same 2x6. They nail onto a ledger. Go look at the detail 19 in the packet, in the detail packet, and float that ledger just a couple inches away from the house. Because if you put this blue line right on top of the stud, it's all going to blur in and look just like a blob. So what you're doing is floating those things away a little bit. Same thing happened to the back porch. And then just to wrap things up finally, I believe, let me try something. Let me try match properties. This is a dashed line. This is supposed to be a dashed line. Okay, let me try something. Yeah, okay. It may be, and I think it's just a line type scale. Yeah, let me type LTS and put in 0.2. Ah, okay, something's happening. Hold on. Oh, come on. Command line. LTS. And I'm going to put in, oh, I know what it was. Yeah, I'm in model space. So let me put in 22. See what happens. Good. Okay, I'll press enter, do 11. Sure. So technically, when you plot this stuff in paper space, if you can, we'd like to see some dashed lines here and here, just like you would here, because those are the pads. But getting back to this framing, there should be a fat beam punched in, hung onto this 6x6 post from here to here. Okay, and go look at detail 12 in the packet, the detail packet. I think it's packet B. And then as these joists run and hang on it, once again, just float about an inch or two away from this intersection, a 2-inch red line, a 2-inch red line. That's a joist hanger. These are concealed flange joist hangers, so they, top view, they look more like a C. Top view, these things, like an L here and an L here, but there's a piece of metal at the bottom to hold up the joist. Likewise here, there is a piece of metal at the bottom to hold up the joist. And this line technically will be in the middle of that hanger. But that's what you would do for the floor joist. And these are 2x8 Douglas fir, number 2 at 24 inches on center. Once again, this ledger ought to float off the wall by a couple inches. Otherwise, it'll just look like a big blob. Okay. So that's about all I need to say right now to wrap up the last things you ought to do for your structural plans.